So today we're going to be looking at the alternate future of the world. We're now on to part 3 of the series. Also, I just want to announce real quick that alternate future videos will come out every Saturday now. Before I was doing it every Wednesday, but that was unofficial. Now it's officially coming out every Saturday, so you'll know when to look for alternate future. But yeah, we're going to be continuing on with the series here. In the last episode, we saw a lot of stuff happening, such as the Soviet Union getting invaded by the Axis and essentially torn apart as they were to lose all of Ukraine and lots of other territories around the country. Additionally, Japan became a lot stronger and the United States created a new alliance over here in the Americas known as the League of Freedom. So if you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All of the support is greatly appreciated and it helps our channel grow. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump straight into the alternate future. So in the last episode, like I said, the Soviet Union got completely torn apart by the Axis and they are left with this, which is essentially just Russia, a little bit of Belarus, and then the Central Asian countries. And with this, we also saw a regime change in Russia with Stalin being thrown out and a new guy being put in, and he's very pro, I guess, world diplomacy. So there's that going for the Soviet Union. But now let's take a look at the Axis, because things with the Axis aren't necessarily correct. Now, if you'll remember in World War II, Germany and Italy, they were allies. You know, Italy had ambitions to conquer the Mediterranean, Germany had ambitions to conquer the world. And then there was Japan, who was kind of like just a third party. They had their idea for a Japanese empire over here in the Pacific, along with, you know, Western Americas. But as we know, Germany and Japan became allies. Unlikely though. But as we know, Germany was a little bit racist and this didn't seem like a likely alliance. And even then, after the war, it was likely that Japan was going to go ahead and break up with the Axis and form its own alliance. Well, World War II ended a few years ago, and even though they did just invade the Soviet Union together, it's time for a breakup. So Japan is going to officially leave the Axis and form its own organization. Now, as of now, no one else is joining this organization because there really is no point in doing so. I mean, they just invaded China, Mongolia, and the Soviet Union, and everyone else is already aligned with an alliance except for Indonesia, who, by the way, I didn't say this in the last video, but they broke away from the Dutch when they were invaded by the Germans, so they're their own thing. I know they in Timor were controlled by the Dutch, but they broke away when that all went to hell, so there's your, I guess, explanation. Anyway, Japan leaves the Axis, and this is going to kind of crumble the Axis a lot, because now some other countries are getting some ideas, and overall, it isn't looking too good for the Axis anymore. Now, I know they went from the strongest alliance in the world to like falling apart, but realistically, when you think about it, this will probably would have happened to the Axis in real life if they had won World War II, because remember, Japan wanted to do their own thing. It was kind of a collaboration effort with the Axis. Italy wants the Mediterranean, and that has, you know, issues with Germany, who wants everything, and these guys really only joined the Axis for protection, so like keep all of that in mind. Next up, we have a pretty big breakaway, and as you can see by where the map is pointed, it's happening in the Middle East. Both Turkey and Iran break away from the Axis, creating their own new alliance in the Middle East, which I guess we'll figure out a name as we go. But this is going to once again weaken the Axis. They're going to have less territory that they have control over. And additionally, you know, they just invaded Afghanistan. But important to note about that is that was a majority of Iranian and Turkish troops that invaded Afghanistan, and the Germans really only had a say in their government. This is going to lead to some disloyalty towards the Germans, and eventually Afghanistan will additionally leave the Axis and go for the new Middle Eastern Pact. So now Germany is a little bit flamed. You know, they're losing a lot of allies, and it's not like that they would have invaded them in the future anyways, should they invade the whole world, but you know, they're nice to have at that time, and now they're gone. Additionally, Romania, Hungary, and Bulgaria are questioning their loyalty, and Italy is starting to look towards the future, which is the Mediterranean once again. Meanwhile, Germany is still scheming on the rest of Europe. You know, they have to get to Sweden, they have to get to Finland, the Soviets still exist, you know, the Allies exist, and they still want to get their hands on that Swiss technology. And speaking of that Swiss technology, remember the Allies and the Soviets all have it now, meaning that the Axis is like kind of outnumbered here in every way. But now it's time for another big event, because that is what this series is all about. We have the Soviet Union making a decision, and that very decision is to join the Allies. This is huge. Like really big. I'm talking about the map. The map is huge. But the Soviets are now a part of the Allies, who are now probably the strongest alliance in the world. We have the UK, who was barely escaped by World War II. We have France, who kind of got scorched a little bit. The Soviets, who also just got scorched a little bit. And a lot of strong colonies like India, or I guess the British Raj, Australia, and then whatever is happening here in Africa. Additionally, China is friendly with the Allies. You know, Japan just obliterated them, and they don't really appreciate that. So they're friendly with the Allies. It really just isn't looking too good for the Axis. And and somebody might be behind this, but they also are the reason this all happened. Now, Switzerland could have just done nothing, like they could have just not done anything, and World War II still would have played out the same way as it did in their timeline. However, we know the Holocaust happened, and World War II was the deadliest war in history, and they really wanted to prevent that from happening, and understandably so. However, their execution was very flawed, and it led to even more death, and they really should have just let it happen. But the blame technically is on Switzerland, but you can't blame them for trying. And now they've managed to expand the Allies to this much by changing it, and it looks like the Axis might be in trouble, especially considering that the amount of countries they can add to their alliance is little to none. China obviously isn't joining it, Mongolia isn't joining it, Saudi Arabia is neutral, Sweden is neutral, Finland is the only country that would like maybe join it, but other than that, everyone else is on a side. So Germany is going to start cooking up some shenanigans. You know, they have a plan, which, you know, plan 1 is to take over the world, but plan 2 is backup plan. You know, in case that doesn't work out how you want it to work out, you have plan 2. That's what they're on right now. First of all, they're going to go ahead and fund some stuff happening in other countries. Now, I'm not going to go over what those countries are right now because that's classified, but some stuff starts to happen in other countries, and maybe some people get into power who shouldn't be in power and have a certain ideology that is aligned with Germany. Okay, so step 2 is getting those people to join your alliance. So who is going to join the Axis? First of all, Mexico, and second of all, Sweden. Finland is, once again, they're neutral, but they're Axis aligned, so they're not going to be joining in on the Axis because they want to have that neutrality that they have. However, you know, they just fought a war against the Soviets, and the Soviets joined the Allies, meaning that they're technically enemies with the Allies. But now the Axis has probably expanded for the final time, and well, there's not really much else we can do. So the Axis declares war on the Allies for the second time, and now we have World War III breaking out only a few years after the breakout of World War II. So similar to how World War I and World War II broke out, you know, World War I happened, and then that ended in 1918, and then World War II started in 1939. You could also argue that it started in 1936 with Japan invading China, but the time span between those 2 years is minuscule, and then the time span between World War II and World War III is even shorter. So this is interesting because Germany wanted this war, whereas the rest of the Axis did not. The rest of the Axis made the conclusion that they would be outnumbered and stomped by the Allies because of Switzerland. Remember, Switzerland gave all their technology over to the Allies and the Soviets and the Americans, and it's hundreds of years in the future, and those weapons are obviously going to go ahead and obliterate World War II era weapons. So Italy here is thinking up a storm. We'll get to that in a second, but for now, let's go ahead and start the war. Germany is right away going to go ahead and start fighting on 2 fronts as they send a battalion down to Paris and successfully capture the city. They also managed to get some French coastline, and over against the Soviets, they have a lot of success at first. Even the Ukrainians begin to get some of their revenge. Elsewhere, we see Spain start to invade Portugal, as well as some areas in lower France. Mexico successfully takes out Belize, and later on in the war, so I don't have to come back to this later, they have them taking over all of Jamaica. Now, the Allies really aren't focused on much of what's happening over here. Even Canada isn't focused on Mexico because of the United States. They're most likely blocking Mexico from going up north at all. You know, they're not a part of the Allies, but they kind of are. It's just kind of like a mutual thing. It's kind of like Finland in the Axis. You know, they're not a part of the Axis, but they're aligned with them and they'd help them out if they needed to. It's the same thing with the US and the Allies. Also, US public opinion is heavily in favor of the Allies as well, so there's that for you as well, just like how it was during World War II. Anyway, back to the war in Europe here. This is going well for Germany. Now into Africa, where it's not going so well. The French colonies have a lot of success in invading and taking out all of Morocco, aka Spain's colonies, and it's here that we see the advanced technology really come into account for the Allies, as they're able to really wipe out everything. Like, there's no chance. And especially, you know, considering World War II, what was happening down here wasn't as advanced as what was happening up here. The lesser technology down here versus the super advanced, it just isn't going to end well. So Africa is allied pretty much immediately. Now remember, this war would be a little bit different if Japan and the Middle Eastern countries were still a part of the Axis. However, they're not. They're now considered neutral, and it's not gonna go great for Germany here, and you'll see why in a second. Anyway, it's been a second, and now the Allies are gonna go ahead and pull their head out of the sand and start their invasion of Germany. Now, Switzerland is gonna go ahead and be the front runner here, as they take over a lot of German land with little to no resistance due to the fact that the army was just blown up. We see the Soviets completely push back up against the Germans and start their invasion of the Baltic states, which is similar to how it went in real life. It was over before it even started. And now they are entering into German territory. We see France push back on 2 fronts and then immediately start to invade into those areas on those 2 fronts. We have them sweeping through their own lands and then once again going past that and into the lowlands. The Soviets go ahead and take over all of the Polish coast coast. Well, I guess it's the German coast, but now they're going ahead and going over to German territory. And at this point, Berlin is being threatened by the Soviets, who are pretty much unstoppable. Now, luckily for the Germans, they did manage to get their hands on some of that Allied technology due to the fact that, you know, it's war. Of course, they're going to get their hands on it because the Allies aren't going to like not die at all. Obviously, they're still going to die, just in a lot lesser amount. So they go into the, you know, if they win a battle, they go onto the enemy's front lines and they take all that stuff back to Germany and re-engineer it. And, you know, that's the Axis now has that future technology stuff. So that's not good, but it's okay because Germany's pretty much done for. I mean, Portugal's gone, if that means anything. It really doesn't because they still have their colonies. But France is also, you know, going through Spain and having no trouble at all. So it really doesn't mean anything at all. Anyway, the French completely liberate all of the lowland areas. And now Germany is questioning its allies, specifically Italy and Ukraine and the Balkans. Like, if we take a look at this map here, you'll notice that they haven't been invaded at all. And that's because they cut a deal with the Allies before the war even started. Basically, they sold out Germany to the Allies and said, hey, Germany, they're going to invade you. We don't want to do that, so we're going to leave the Axis, but we're just giving you a heads up. We're not going to invade you, so when the war starts, don't invade us. And the Allies were like, cool. So Italy officially leaves the Axis. They're taking themselves and all of their land with them, as well as their colonies. And despite them fighting against France in the Second World War, they are able to keep the land that they stole from them, aka Corsica and Tunisia. So Italy leaves the war, and from here, it really doesn't get any better for Germany. Bulgaria is out, Romania is out, Ukraine is out, Hungary's out, and their puppet states are feeling a little bit rebellious. So going back to this map, you'll notice that well, if we go ahead and just get rid of the countries that just left the war, Germany's pretty much on their own other than Spain, Sweden, and Mexico. So in order to keep their lands and not lose completely everything, they're going to sit down with the Allies and negotiate a peace treaty, which essentially lets them live. So let's take a look at that peace treaty. All right, let's go ahead and break down this peace treaty where it only really involves Europe. So Germany here got off really lucky. Like, they got super duper lucky. They didn't lose that much land. They lost land in France, in Belgium, and Luxembourg. However, those were never their lands in the first place. They did lose out on Alsace-Lorraine, but that goes back to France. It was already French pre-World War II. And then over here to the Soviets, they did lose like kind of a lot, but half of it was the Baltics, which wasn't theirs, and then the other half was Polish, which wasn't theirs. And they still retain a lot of Poland, which is like right in there where the blue is. So they still got off lucky. You know, they didn't lose too much land. Now, Spain, on the other hand, they lost a lot of land. They lost Catalonia, who broke away when France was invading, and then they lost some northern coast up here. However, they made a little bit of a trade with the Allies, so in order to keep their colonies, they agreed to give back Portugal, and Portugal is now part of the Allies again. Now, speaking of allies, let's take a look at this map here. So the Axis is pretty much gone. It's now just Germany, their puppets, and as well as Sweden, Spain, and Mexico, as well as Nicaragua. Other than that, we have Italy, we have Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, and Ukraine. They all dipped. Norway was also forced back onto the Allies by the Allies, so that's why they're blue now. That's part of the peace treaty. I don't know why I didn't say that earlier, but yeah. Germany had to give up Norway. Also, Switzerland got some land, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the Axis is pretty much gone, which sucks for Germany. But if you're the Allies, you're good with this because you control a majority of the world. Now, there is a popular movement going around, and if you haven't noticed already, it's the independent movement. We saw Greenland get independence from Denmark when it was invaded in World War II, as well as Iceland. We saw Catalonia get independence when the French just invaded them. We saw Ukraine get independence when the Axis invaded Russia. And now down to Africa, we can see that the DRC and Angola are both now fully independent countries. And that's because Portugal lost control of Angola during the war with Germany and the Axis. When they lost all of their main country, we basically had Angola rebelling against them and forming their own government, in which case the Allies allowed, because, you know, Portugal wasn't there to stop it from happening, because, you know, they were. But Angola is now an independent country, as well as the DRC, who was freed from Germany, and Jamaica, who was invaded by Mexico, and then after that, they just kind of got their independence via the peace treaty. Mexico did get Belize out of it, and that's just because they won that part of the war. But now the Allies are huge, but some of their colonies kind of want to break away. However, that will be in the next episode. Now, I'm not ending it here, but I'm just saying that that will probably happen in the next episode, if it does happen at all, which I don't know. It's the future. I can't see the future. But anyway, Germany is really pissed off, and understandably so. They just lost all of their friends who backstabbed them, and then they lost a war and lost a lot of land. So now they're going to take it out on everybody else. First of all, they annexed their puppets of Slovakia and Yugoslavia, and then they declared war on Hungary. Now remember, Hungary just ditched Germany and just went neutral, but Germany did not let that slide, and now they're invading them. And unfortunately for Hungary, they don't stand a chance as the Germans roll over Hungary. And now Hungary will be a part of Germany. So yeah, Hungary is now German, and you know, Germany in World War II was not a good country, and in that era, really, they weren't doing the best of things. And you know, Hungary is a totally different ethnicity from Germany, and you know, it's not great stuff happening here. And the Allies know this, and the Allies are not going to do anything. They're not going to try appeasement again, because Switzerland is, you know, they kind of started this whole fiasco, so they're not really going with the appeasement strategy. But instead, they're just going to let Germany do this, as horrible as that is. And you know why? It's because these guys were just a part of the Axis. They're not all of a sudden friends. They're still enemy countries. So why do we care what happens there? After Germany is spotted putting troops on Romania's border, some of these countries are going to begin to take action, such as Italy, who's going to go ahead and form a new alliance known as the Mediterranean Order. Now with this, they're going to go ahead and get themselves an ally known as Bulgaria, as well as Ukraine. Now with this is basically the anti-Axis pact that's also anti-allies. Basically, we're the Axis, you know, we're the Axis of the Axis, but we're not friends with you because you're allies. It's weird. It's just really weird. There's a whole lot of sabotaging and backstabbing happening here in Europe, and really Germany's to blame. But now Germany is going to go ahead and go after Romania, and it is here that we see the Mediterranean Order take action. First of all, Germany does its Germany things and starts to invade Romania, but after a little while, the Mediterranean Order is going to intervene, and by that, I mean they're also going to invade Romania. Now, the Romanian citizens here are a little confused. You know, it's a little bit of a weird war. You're getting invaded by your allies, but as well as your allies, because your allies just became your enemies, but then they became your allies again. So who's really the ally, right? But yeah, Romanian citizens are pretty much just split between this, although a majority is leaning over towards the Greens since, you know, they're anti-Germany and Germany started this war. Anyway, Romania is gone, so what now? Well, a peace treaty, of course, that's what's next. You guys know, it's the same thing every video. Alright, looking at this peace treaty here, Romania just gets obliterated. They're not even recognizable at this point. So, Germany is going to take the majority of land here, getting a lot of this part, aka Transylvania. And that might be to kind of appease the Hungarians they just annexed. But additionally, they're going to get some of the Balkan land that was taken by Romania. And overall, Germany's looking really funky now. Now, as for the other countries which are involved in this war, Bulgaria gets a lot of southern Romania and one of their claims, which is over here. This is now accurate to modern day. And we have Ukraine getting Moldova as well as some of their claims, and then a little bit out of northern Romania. Now, looking at the alliance map, we can see that Romania joins the new Mediterranean Order, but we can also see that this area isn't fully Italian yet. Now, this is what they claimed in the peace treaty. However, they want to work out a deal with Bulgaria. Basically, a trade offer. They are going to go ahead and ask for this segment of Greece, and in exchange, Bulgaria will get this. Now, Bulgaria, obviously, this is going to be more valuable than that, but, you know, Italy's kind of the faction leader, and you don't really want to be mad with them because they just kind of saved you from Germany. So, yeah, you know what? That's cool. Let's do that, Italy. And we had this going Bulgarian in exchange for this going Italian. And now we have Europe looking like this. So, Germany is still probably the dominant power. They'd probably win a 1v1 against any other country because they now, you know, they stole that technology during the war and they have the advanced technology as well as these other members down here in the Mediterranean Order. So the whole world is basically 300 years in the future in terms of technology, but also 300 years in the past. Well, actually at the past since the first series, because remember the first series was like 400 years in the future or something like that. Am I making any sense right now? This is like 1950 or 1955-ish. They have technology from 400 years in the future. However, they still have the mindset from 1955, if that makes any sense. I think that makes sense. Anyway, that is going to do it for today's alternative future of the world video. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Like I said in the beginning, all the support is greatly appreciated and it helps our channel grow. This series has been pretty crazy so far, and I like that. I like crazy series because they're fun, and I had fun with this video. The more you know. So once again, thanks for the support on the channel so far. Showing more support is greatly appreciated, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And of course, thank you to all the super fans. This includes Patrick Clauser, Yo Moma Moma, Texan Cowboy Cheese, Kylie Speaks Plays, Poland Country Ball, Dimitri, DW Cool Dude, Nevada Garbage Trucks, Yakko, Soviet Ball, and Serminator. Once again, thank you guys.